Good evening. I'm Richard Bressler, Vice Chair of the Board of Advisors of Weinstein Hospice, and we're going to help families manage the administrative tasks after a loss in the next hour. Weinstein Hospice is a nonprofit organization that provides comfort and the highest quality hospice care at home to people and their families confronting life-limiting and end-of-life illnesses. An important part of Jewish home life, Weinstein Hospice provides an important part of the continuum of care. Inspired by Jewish traditions and values, Jewish home life helps families face the journey of aging through an extraordinary network of lifestyles, healthcare, and support services, no matter where they choose to live. With the advent of the internet and cloud-based storage, people's paperwork and legacy plans are often in different places than they used to be. To help us understand where important documents are, we will be in conversation with Rachel Donnelly, the founder and CEO of Afterlight, a consulting firm that offloads the administrative tasks that come with legacy planning and after loss. Rachel is affectionately known as the boss of after loss and a real-life little orphan Annie. Rachel graduated from Agnes Scott College with a degree in political science and has been featured on several podcasts. She is the co-founder of Professionals of After Loss Services and serves on the board of directors of Love Not Lost, an Atlanta nonprofit that provides grief tools and free photography for families facing terminal diagnoses. Rachel lives in Atlanta with her husband, Zach, and their 2 children. So if questions arise throughout the program, please put them in the chat box. Prefer that over the Q&A box so we can direct the questions. Let's meet Rachel, who will give us an overview of her program.
Thank you so much, Richard. I am so excited to be here. Thank you for coming out on this rainy evening to join me. We're going to put some pep in the evening, and I promise you it's going to be worth the next hour that you're going to spend with me. So I'd love to, if I can turn over sharing my screen to be able to show you. There we go. And thank you for that thoughtful introduction. Can you see it, Richard? All good?
Yes.
All
yes,
right, perfect. Okay. Well, thank you again for that introduction. Before we get started, I'm going to do the quick fun disclaimer for the legalese. This webinar, this illustration this evening is for educational purposes only. I am not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a financial advisor. So please seek the appropriate guidance where appropriate, where necessary. So Richard gave a little bit about me and a little bit of my background. But I grew up on the south side of Atlanta in a small town called Hampton, Georgia, where my father was the family physician in town. Unfortunately, he got sick when I was 13 and passed away when I was 16. I grew up with, leaning into hard spaces because of his illness and death, and then also accompanying him on house calls with patients, going to the hospital with them. So it was very normal for me to be in that sort of world around tough decisions and deaths and illnesses. Fast forward several years later, after I graduated from Agnes Scott and got married, I just started a brand new job at Shepherd Center. And my mother got sick and passed away within my first 3 weeks there. Her unfortunate and untimely passing left me to have to take care of her brother, my uncle, who was in the latter stages of Parkinson's disease, and he lived out of state. So I was thrust into this world of having to probate my mother's estate and then start tracking down all of her accounts and assets and debts, and do the same thing with my uncle, redo all of his estate planning documents, track down his important papers, ask him what preferences and wishes and goals he had and what was most important to him and how I could advocate on his behalf. In doing that, I really discovered that there was a gap in terms of the way we had settled my grandmother's estate by utilizing that old avocado green metal file cabinet that we all have. And now having to probate my mother's estate. And then after my uncle passed away, probating his as well, having to track down all of those online documents and assets that are in the cloud, in a device, and are not in that physical, tangible form. So let me tell you a little bit more about what we do at Afterlight. I created this company because I wanted to help give families, individuals, overwhelmed executors the ability to stop wondering what they're supposed to be doing and get back to the things that matter. How do we do that? So we offer two core services at Afterlight. The first is after loss consulting. We help clients walk them step by step after they've lost a loved one. We create a personalized roadmap, like I said, so they can get back to their grief journey and not wonder what they're supposed to do, what's first, what's last, who they should contact, and helping them navigate through that decision paralysis. We also do what I like to call legacy planning. And we're going to talk about a very important aspect of legacy planning this evening. And how I describe legacy planning is the process to help individuals preserve their story, protect their family, and capture the critical details that people often forget to pass on. So in my work with clients and in my own personal experience as an executor, I saw these recurring themes, these recurring blind spots and knowledge gaps that were happening. So I added this as part of the curriculum of helping people with legacy planning to make sure that this didn't happen over and over again. So I like to drill it down and say that we either help prevent or manage dumpster fires. So I love utilizing this screen, this digitalization of services. It's a great visual. It was created by the Harvard Innovation Lab. And the goal is to illustrate the impact that technology has had on our lives over the last 35 years. As you can see, a cluttered desk complete with that Rolodex, a file cabinet, a fax machine transforms into a much cleaner, simpler surface consisting of only a laptop, cloud services, and a mobile phone. So this goes back to show, I was talking about that avocado green metal file cabinet. We used to be able to go back to that and open it up and get out all of those files, but not anymore. It has been compacted into this digital form. So one of these critical details that people often forget to pass on are their digital assets. And you may be thinking, Rachel, what is a digital asset? I'm going to try to break it down in a very simple way. It's pretty much anything you touch with a keyboard. I like to say often, it's much more than your Facebook account or your social media. It's your online accounts. It's your digital photos and videos. It is your social media, your cloud storage repositories, health records, subscriptions, your Delta Sky Miles, on and on and on. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, if you're into that. All of that makes up what we like to call your digital estate, which is made up of all of these types of digital assets. So it's so much more than your online presence. It's, all this, your technology devices and cloud storage make up your entire digital estate. So, back in 3 years ago in 2020, our digital presence, our online presence exploded during COVID. We had to learn how to adapt and be able to carry on with everyday life, but in a much more digital way. So we had to go to start, ordering food online, Zooming in our underwear with our boss. Hope you didn't do that. Speaking with our doctor in order to get our routine visits and prescription medicines, having social hours with family and children and grandchildren. And with that, with this adaptation, like I said, our digital lives, our digital presence exploded. And you may be thinking, I don't have that many digital assets, Rachel, but I promise you, you have much more than you ever could have realized. And with that, it's not just for the Gen Xers, the millennials, the Gen Zers. The online presence among baby boomers also exploded during 2020 and beyond. Baby boomers spend an average of 27 hours per week online. And during COVID and beyond, the rise in utilizing digital health grew by 469%, curbside delivery by 431%, retail and restaurants by 300%, and even online banking went up by almost 10%. So this is for anyone and everyone these days. It is not just for the Gen Xers or younger. So I know it's a rainy evening. I know it's getting late, but I'd love to do a poll to make sure you guys are still out there with me and make sure you're still paying attention. I'd love to get a couple of guesses, if you want to drop it in the chat, of how many online accounts with distinct usernames and passwords you think the average American internet user has. So Richard, I'd love to hear if anybody is so brave to pop in. There's no wrong guess.
Come on, people, let's guess something. Put it in the chat box.
I'm not seeing anything.
That means 0. All right, here's one. Chat is disabled. All right, we'll put it in the Q&A.
Oh, there we go.
$50, $30, $30. We have a few guesses.
Yeah. 50,
No.
120. Yeah, we're getting
300. Okay, go ahead.
to put you out of your misery. I know you were just at the end of 2020 was 207, and the average number of distinct accounts per internet user. That was anticipated, expected, predicted to exceed over 300. So whoever put 300 by the end of 2022, I haven't seen any data to back that up, but that was the estimate. I know I have over 400 online accounts with distinct usernames and passwords between me, my kids' stuff, my business. So I have a huge online presence. So you may be thinking, all right, Rachel, I get what this is. What's the big deal? Why is this important? Why are we here? Why are we in Operation Lockdown to talk about why you should protect your digital assets? And like I said, that's me. There are my digital assets, and here's how I try to protect them. And I'm going to tell you why they're important. And then I'm going to take you in a step-by-step process of ways that you can protect and safeguard them today. So first and foremost, they have financial and exchange value. Experts predict that the greatest transfer of wealth will take place in the next couple of years when over 30 trillion in wealth is passed on to the children of those boomers in the Gen X, millennial, post-millennial generations. Only 44% of Americans over 55 have a will, even after COVID. Even less have a plan for their digital assets. So each year, over 60 billion in assets, life insurance payouts, investments, cash are unclaimed, forgotten, and lost each year. And why is this? Because people don't know about it. These statements are being delivered electronically via email or elsewhere, and they can't just sit by the mailbox and wait for these things to be delivered to know what their loved ones' assets, investments, and banking accounts were. They also have exchange value. I mentioned your Delta Sky Miles, your Amazon points, on and on and on. All of those have exchange value. So next, aside from having financial value, they have sentimental value. In this digital age, personal assets, such as photos, videos, may not be in physical form, but instead stored in a smartphone, a flash drive, a Shutterfly account, cloud storage, Facebook, on and on and on. And I know I would be devastated if no one had access to all those photos that I've taken of my kids and my family. So they have very real sentimental value. Preserving, protecting, safeguarding your digital assets helps prevent identity theft. As we all know, identity theft is growing every day. 1 out of every 8 deaths results in what we call ghosting, which is post-mortem identity theft. So leaving digital accounts untouched in cyberspace, even if they don't carry any sentimental or monetary value, can still impact estate administration if these accounts, contain personal information or sensitive data that could be leaked. 2.5 million identities are stolen each year, and about 13% of this is from deceased individuals. Finally, and most importantly, protecting, organizing your digital assets helps aid in estate administration. Traditionally, trusts and estates have largely ignored, not known what to do. There's not best practices around what to do with digital assets. So like I said, this leaves those 207 accounts or more vulnerable. That requires a lot more time from executors, from surviving loved ones, from trustees, from family members to have to track that down and find those sort of digital breadcrumbs of their loved one. So I just alluded to this a little bit more, but traditionally digital assets are not addressed in those typical estate planning documents, in a trust or a will or a power of attorney. Your Delta Sky miles, I went to Agnes Scott. I have an alumni portal where I can log in and get access to different educational networking tools and a directory of my classmates. That's not included in my will. My Marriott points, my LinkedIn, Amazon, all these things haven't traditionally been addressed in estate planning mechanisms. So here is an actual video of me cleaning out my grandmother's house after my mom died. This house had been in our family since 1890, and my mother hadn't gotten around to cleaning it out after my grandmother died. So there are varying estimates that say it takes between 420 to 570 hours on average for an executor to settle an estate. I mean, if your mind's not blown, mine is. I can personally attest to how long it took me. It took me 7 years to settle my mom's estate, 2.5 years to settle my uncle's estate. And I have countless clients that are in multiple years of estate administration. 6 out of 10 people said it took them longer than they expected. It is a long process. It is a laborious process. So getting your affairs in order beforehand will help really lessen this burden for your loved ones. So as I like to say, your digital assets are the new player at the estate planning table, not only to save your family, loved ones, executors time and anguish, but it will help you get better organized today, prevent identity theft, prevent money from being lost. So you're thinking, well, how do I do this, Rachel? How do I get my digital estate organized? We're going to do this step by step together. And you may be furiously taking down notes. Just know that at the end of this presentation, I'm going to give you my email address where I outline step by step the tools that you can utilize to organize your digital assets. So you don't need to take screenshots or furiously take notes. I've given you the easy button to that. All you have to do is email me and I will send it to you. So step 1, this is not fun. I'm going to go ahead and just documenting anything from the credentials to access your email and social media, access codes, unlock codes. I'm going to stop there. You get anything out of this presentation tonight, or you just get one thing only, make sure somebody has the unlock code to your phone and ability to access your computer. That's it. Don't log off, stay around. But I just want to add that. That's one thing I want you to take away from this. So what does that mean doing an inventory of your digital assets? Like I said, write down that unlock code to your phone or computer, your email accounts, messaging services, your Zelle, your PayPal, your Cash App, your electronic devices, any external hard drives, your household or utility accounts. You may pay your yard guy with a Zelle account. Your family may not know that. And if something were to happen to you, they would say, now, how did mom or dad pay the lawn guy every 2 weeks? So write that down. Shopping and video accounts, cloud storage, business interests. If you have a business, your URLs, your trademarks, your software, on and on and on. This is a long, laborious process, but it is so, so worth it. So that's step one. Moving on to step two. A lot of the custodians, the tech companies have caught on to this, and they're like, okay, Houston, we have a problem here. Because these assets are not in tangible physical format, we need to figure out a way for customers to be able to, in essence, name a beneficiary for their online accounts. So a lot of the big tech companies, Google, Facebook, and Apple, have caught on to this and said, all right, let's figure out a way to allow our users to name a beneficiary of their account. So these are sort of the cousins of traditional beneficiary accounts. So for example, like I said, Facebook has more active users than any other social media platform at 2.7 billion. And it's also the leader when it comes to legacy pre-planning features. They added this memorialization settings features a couple of years ago to give users the ability to either have their account closed or memorialized, naming a legacy contact after death. Apple, about a year and a half ago, with the unveiling of their iOS 15, unveiled a legacy contact feature. What I love about this is you can name up to 5 people, 13 or over, to be one of your Apple legacy contacts. So you can make your teenager one of your Apple legacy accounts. They don't have to have an Apple account. Unlike Facebook, you have to have a Facebook account in order to be able to be a legacy contact. So my husband doesn't have one. I've made my sister my legacy contact, which is fine. It's just making sure that everybody's on the same page. And then with the legacy contact feature, it doesn't give you ability to have access to everything, and you can pick and choose what that legacy contact will be able to see, but it is light years ahead of the old way where you were just permanently locked out if you didn't know their password or username credentials. Google also has a great tool that I love. If you're among the, how many billions of people that use Gmail. So they've created their inactive account manager that not only allows you the ability to name a delegate, a contact, if you were to pass away, but if you were incapacitated, manager to notify my husband and say, Rachel has not checked her email. We are now activating this inactive account manager. So step 3, we want to talk about the 3 C's. Now, I'm not talking about diamonds. I'm talking about correct, complete, and current information. You may be thinking, Rachel, I have written down all my passwords. All I have to do is hand it over. They're in that calendar that I get from the dentist, and I keep it in my purse, and I have all of my passwords in there. No, not a good practice. Because if you're forced to change that password, or you're utilizing the same password over and over again, and like I said, you're prompted to change it, what is the likelihood you're going to go to that analog list and update it with that current, complete, and correct information? So along with that, in addition to that, you may want to consider writing a simple letter outlining your wishes, creating a document to on how you store information, log in information, unlock codes with a trusted person to make sure they have the 3 Cs. Consider using a digital vault. And what do I mean by that? A cloud-based individual secure vault for maintaining and organizing digital and tangible assets for the purpose of estate planning. What I love about it, you would be able to access them from anywhere and everywhere. If you were on a river cruise on the Rhine, and for some reason you needed to access your loved one's medical power of attorney, utilizing that digital vault, you would be able to access it there and then. There are some great tools out there. Everplans has one, My Life and Wishes, Legacy Concierge. I've also identified those in this document, this ways to organize your digital estate that you can get as a freebie if you email me. Now this can get a little controversial, but some people are very scared of using a password manager. I love it. It has revolutionized my life. I have utilized all of these different platforms just to beta test them. I love Dashlane. It is the user experience has been my favorite. It is consistently ranked number 1, number 2. They all have, military grade, advanced encryption that you can utilize to store, secure, auto-generate, auto-capture, and auto-populate passwords. I don't ever have to think of a new password. Dashlane does it for me. Then I utilize it on all of my devices to be able to access any account I need to from anywhere. Now you may be thinking, all right, Rachel, I use that Apple keychain or Google Chrome Pass. Okay, all right. We're going to talk about those. Those are a type of password manager, but they're locally stored. They're not the most secure. Apple Keychain is a little bit more secure than Google Chrome Pass. The issue with Apple Keychain is if you use, it's only for Apple devices. So if you're like me and you have a Dell laptop and an Apple iPhone, you're going to end up you're going to end up having what I like to call password spaghetti. You're only going to have the passwords that you access via your Apple device in that keychain. And so all that the 3 Cs, current, complete, and correct, is not going to be captured in that keychain. In Chrome Pass, there was an article not too long ago how someone stole a woman's phone from a bar, and was able to download all of their passwords from Google Chrome Pass and Apple Keychain within a couple of minutes and change all their passwords in their banking and financial institutions and really wreak some havoc. So this is why I love using these cloud-based, uber secure password managers for this reason. All right, we're on step 4. We're getting there.
Hey, Rachel, let me
Yeah.
interrupt you for a second. A person who really wants to be private, an anonymous attendee, is asking about 1Password as a different password manager.
I think that's great. I am password agnostic. You find what works for you, what works for your budget, what like I said, I don't really have a dog in the fight of which one you use. Just use one. Like I said, if you found one and it's working for your system, just make sure, like I said, that it has that military grade encryption, 2-factor authentication, and it's that cloud-based password manager. So any of those are great. You find what works for you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, perfect. So involve your estate planning attorney. Make sure that you have an estate plan that complies with whatever laws, and yes, there are laws that have been enacted in the last couple of years that specifically deal with digital assets. So the actual law is called RUFADA, and that is the Revised Uniform Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act. So with that, you want to make sure that your estate plan, your will, your trust, your power of attorney has the language in there that gives your executor, your agent, your trustee the authority over digital as well as tangible assets. And like I said, not just your will, but your power of attorney. So if you were incapacitated, your agent would be able to pay your mortgage, pay your bills on your behalf. And those that would be considered a digital asset. I'm not going to nerd out too much about the law. I can already feel you guys falling asleep on the other side. But like I said, over the last 10 years, almost all 50 states have passed this digital estate legislation, RUFADA. However, so why did let me go back. Why did they pass these laws? Because the Uniform Probate Code does not address digital assets. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which penalizes unlawful access to computers and data without, authorization, is silent on a fiduciary's access to digital assets. And then the Stored Communications Act, which protects a user's privacy and governs access to electronic storage, is also silent on a fiduciary's access to digital assets. So RUFADA was enacted to help provide that pathway for fiduciaries to have legal access to those digital assets. However, many of the accounts are still governed by what we call the TOSAs, the terms of service. So that 45 pages of 4-point font that nobody reads basically says that your loved one would not have access to that if you were to die. So let's review our action steps. We're going to create an inventory. We're going to utilize online planning tools where available. I really hope that so many more platforms, custodians get online, get on board with these cousins to the beneficiary tools to be able to give families, individuals the ability to add a contact. So utilize those tools where available, secure, store, and update, updated information, and contact your estate planning attorney to legalize your digital estate as needed. I want to go back and add one more thing about passwords, because every day somebody says, well, Rachel, I've written down all my passwords. We're going to be good. I'm just going to hand them over. Microsoft, Apple, and Google have made a pact that they are going to be going passwordless in the next couple of years. What does that mean? You are going to receive what's called a passkey every time to access your account. You will receive a one-time access key via your smartphone to be able to access it. So if you don't have that inventory of your accounts, your loved one may not know that that account exists, and the password may not work because this custodian has gone passwordless.
Studies. I'd like everyone to start thinking about questions. We already have a couple of questions in the box, but start thinking about questions and putting them in, and we'll get to them toward the end. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm just going to talk quickly about a case study, and this was where things went really, really wrong. So a client of mine, his father hired me. He was 36, passed away very tragically, unexpectedly, but with a will naming the dad the executor. The family's top priorities in hiring me were retrieving electronic files, texts, and digital assets from Apple and Google. What were their barriers? They didn't know the unlock code to his phone. They didn't know his Gmail and iCloud passwords. And the will did not address digital assets as well as tangible assets. And the email addresses were not associated with his name. So we were having a hard time proving to Apple that his email address, which was a little esoteric, something, I like snakes at gmail.com or something like that. We could not prove that that address belonged to the decedent. Furthermore, after he passed away, his family tried to log into his Google account and guess the password. They didn't know that they were doing anything wrong, but they inadvertently locked themselves out. Why is that? When we went to Google and we petitioned them to say, can you please deliver the digital assets of this decedent to the family? They said, well, we can see on this date, and this date, following his passing, from the death certificate you have provided, somebody has tried to log in. That circumvents our protocol. You are permanently locked out. So it was very heartbreaking for the family. Here's where things went great. Had a client who is a widow, remarried. She's 71 years young, 4 children. She reached out to me with some, she said, I have some health issues. I don't know how long I have. None of us do. She said, I really just need a husband. There are all these trusts that he set up. I'm not sure what they all mean. Her attorney had retired. She, like I said, she didn't really understand her current estate plan, couldn't find her will, didn't know how old her power of attorney was, and needed to set up a special needs trust for her son. We did a detailed organization process of getting all of her documents in order and organized. I helped her put together all the questions she would need to take to her new attorney and helped her get everything organized to be able to hand over to her executor. She and her family traveled to Israel at least 2 or 3 times a year. And she had over 1 million Delta Sky Miles from those trips back and forth to Israel. And I told her, I said, listen, if something happened to you tomorrow, Delta has a very strict policy about handing over Sky Miles. Let's figure out a way for you to go ahead and use some of these. So if God forbid something were to happen, you wouldn't lose these Sky Miles that belong to you and have financial value. She started using them to fly her and her family over to Israel for passive power of attorney and your advance directives. But all these things up under here are the critical details people forget, don't know that they should pass on. Like I said, your unlock code to your phone. Who gets grandma's pie plate and when? What are, your list of online accounts? Are your beneficiaries up to date? What are your funeral wishes? What family traditions and stories and important recipes do you want to make sure are passed on? So that is why at Afterlight, we have created these bespoke legacy planning packages where we walk step by step in helping you capture those critical details, preserve your story, and safeguard your legacy. We have 3 different packages to best suit you based on your needs and your budget. Our essential legacy starts at $2,500, and then it goes all the way up to our full complete legacy, which is $5,500. They all utilize our trademarked legacy building formula, where we go through all of these core components, building that rock solid, comprehensive, holistic legacy. But in honor of this webinar this evening, everybody needs a tune-up every once in a while. For everyone here with Weinstein Hospice and Jewish Home Life. So it is more for the DIYer, the more someone who maybe wants to be able to give in the reins and run with it. It includes 2 45-minute strategy sessions with me, as well as a 30-minute wrap-up session. I include all these workbooks, templates, spreadsheets. I walk you step by step of how to add a legacy contact with your Facebook account. And it is $9.95. And I'm offering this to the first 10 people who sign up. All you'll need to do is email me. And this is just a great deal where you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck and be able to build a comprehensive legacy plan, but in a more DIY and budget-friendly way. So like I said, this 10-point analysis is, of your current plan with questions and prompts based on the core components of your legacy plan. It includes the essential tools, templates, resources. We address all of the core components of the legacy building formula to help you build out a rock solid legacy plan. Now, if you want to email me, I will send you, everybody gets a copy of the Ways to Protect Your Digital Estate Today. There's Oprah. You press pause, take a breath, and turn it over to Richard for questions.
Well, yeah, we've got a couple questions already in. Uh, Back on the password managers, what kind of costs are associated with the password managers?
Yeah, they're very, very affordable. I think Dashlane, I think it's about $79 a year. And my husband and I have a family plan. So we both have access to add our passwords within that family plan. But most of them should be, you know, $5 to $10 a month. But if you pay, I know if you pay for a year, they usually give you a bundled deal. So I'd say less than $100 a year.
Okay. So with regards to the miles rewards on a credit card, uh, this particular person is saying they have a client whose father recently passed. She's an additional card owner for most of his credit cards, some which have significant frequent flyer miles. Can she have these miles transferred to her?
It depends on the airline. So if it's Delta, they have a very strict policy to not hand over Sky Miles. All of the other airlines are a lot more thoughtful, lenient, and they will hand over those frequent flyer points to the decedent's family. So it depends. If it's Delta, you got to decide, is it better, should you call and ask? Sometimes if you get somebody and you call and you just ask, they will. But like I said, it is their policy to not hand them over.
But before someone passes away, can't they gift those miles to someone else?
Yes, you can. You could put that in a letter of instructions. But like I said, with Delta, it doesn't matter where you put it. That is their terms of service.
Okay. So after a loss, if someone did not plan ahead for digital assets,
On there. If you start getting any statements in the mail, just start making that detailed list so that once you get the go ahead, if you're appointed executor, appointed administrator, you can start going ahead to close, transfer, and or archive those accounts.
okay.
Is that helpful?
Yes. Back on the credit card, this person has miles through the credit card. So by contacting the credit card company, does that give you access to those?
No, you would need to contact the airline directly. One
Okay.
thing I tell people to do also is it depends on the situation. If there is an authorized user, say if there's a wife and her husband was the primary card user and she has an authorized card, what we don't want to do is cancel anything that may may lock her out of using their primary credit card. But I do tell people to report to the credit bureaus to have their credit frozen after their passing, to make sure that there isn't any credit taken out in their name. So we've got the credit card and the airline points. Even though they are accumulated through that credit card, they're sort of two different custodians, if that makes sense.
Okay. Back on the password manager stuff, when you have something like Dashlane, I mean, should some people go ahead and do that if one day the passwords are going to go away and it's going to be a
100%. Yeah, 100%. It's still, so it also assists in you creating that inventory of your accounts. It will auto capture all of your accounts. So if you want to be able to just go ahead and have that list of all your accounts, your password manager will do that for you in a way, sort of scan, your online, whatever browser you use. So every time you log in, it's capturing that. So yes, I would still use it just for your day-to-day. Like I said, it has revolutionized my life.
Okay. Sounds like you need a death certificate to do almost anything.
That's the keys to the kingdom.
How long does it take to get a death certificate? I mean,
it depends on the county. Anywhere from 10 to 20 days, I've heard it's standard. I know during COVID, a medical power of attorney to make sure that they could advocate on your behalf should something happen to you. But in regards to adding someone to your banking account, that is critical in adding them as a POD or a TOD, which is payable on death or transfer on death, so that they would have access to funds, be able to pay any immediate expenses should something happen to you, should you pass away. So absolutely have that conversation with whoever you select. Give them all of the information that they need. But yes, I would think that that would be very important to be able to have someone who could make those decisions and pay any debts, or, while you were incapacitated or after you passed away.
So if a person makes an inventory of all of their assets, including life insurance policies and such, but forgets that they bought a term life insurance policy, 20 years ago or something, and forgets to talk about that in the estate, how would you find that? How would you know about it?
So that's part of my process when someone passes away and working with clients. A lot of times they do not know, they have no clue what their loved one had. So I actually do that sort of digital discovery and have a lot of tools that I utilize to help find any unclaimed property.
Okay. We talked about the POD or the TOD. Can that be a minor child?
No.
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 And that's Georgia law, or that's everywhere law?
I would think that's a good question. I would talk to your attorney, but I wouldn't think you could make a minor, a fiduciary.
Okay.
In other words.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from our panel group here? Going once, twice. So listen, if you can't think of a question right now, but you think of a question later.
And Terry, if you want to reach out to me, happy to take this offline to talk about those those frequent flyer miles.
Okay. There are no other questions. I want to thank you, everybody, for coming in and watching this webinar.
Thank you so much for having me, Richard. It was such an honor. And thank you to Weinstein Hospice and to Jewish Home Life and to everyone.
And we are working on next year's conversations, and we will let our team know. I'm sure we have a few more programs in mind. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.